You all for having me today. It's a great honor to be able to speak to you about a little bit about us, who we are as a college and university, as well as hopefully help some people out there with the essay process and how to put your best foot forward with the essays that you'll be submitting for your application. So my name is Mike Halligan. I'm the Senior Director of Recruitment and Admissions for our MBA programs here at the Fisher College of Business, which is part of Ohio State University. For those of you who are familiar with Ohio State University or kind of our area, we're located in close to the central part of the United States. The Midwest is what we refer to it. We were talking a little bit earlier about the weather. It was pretty chilly this morning. It was about 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which I know I think you guys operate on Celsius, so we can do the conversions maybe a little bit later. Probably colder than you've experienced in quite a while compared to over there. But basically our program is a smaller program than what you'd see at some of the other institutions you might be applying for. We typically bring in anywhere between 60 to 70 students in a given year. So our actual program is fairly small compared to some of those others. We have a recently redesigned program which is designed to allow our students flexibility in what they want to take. So we allow our students to take courses in any, basically any college around our campus or any kind of class organization that you'd like to take. So we have students that take courses, elective courses in engineering or public health, or kind of all across the campus as far as different types of courses that you can take. And I think something that we do a little bit differently than some of the other programs you might see is that we are itself, the university as a whole, Ohio State, is one of the top 7 largest universities in the United States, but our MBA program is very small comparatively. So what I think we do really well is we're able to take all of the resources that we have at this very large university and funnel them into our students within this MBA program so that you're receiving the best opportunities for networking, you're receiving the best resources as far as the amount of people we can connect you to, study resources, networking opportunities, companies that come in and recruit our students. And then within the cohort itself, the 60 to 70 students really support each other and help each other out through the job search process and within classes as well. So that's a little bit about us. I'm sure you'll have other questions about the program as well, and I'd be happy to answer those, and look forward to talking with you all today.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I wanted to ask, do you have any slides to share?
I don't have any slides with me. I have a few talking points that I can go over about the essays in general, but I don't have any slides right now, no.
Okay. All right, so I'll just delve into the session in general. So for everyone who is joining today looking forward to starting an MBA program, what would you say is the best approach for the essays?
Yeah, absolutely. So the essays are going to be a piece of pretty much every application you're going to fill out for any school that you're attending. There's a few points that I want to make. It's not anything that I think is going to be kind of mind-blowing as far as revelations regarding an essay. I'm sure everybody in here can probably think of these things, and it makes, you know, kind of common sense for these things, but it's good to kind of get them all out there and make sure that as you're completing your essays and writing your essays, that you're focusing on a few key points throughout those entire pieces that you'll be writing. So first and foremost, most applications are going to ask specific essay questions. For instance, on our application, we ask 2 essay questions that you'll have responses to. The first one is going to be basically just a description of what your short and long-term goals are and how an MBA can help you achieve those short and long-term goals, and basically just giving us an idea of how the MBA fits into your overall kind of life plan and how it's going to get you to that next step. The second question that we ask is to tell us about an important achievement that you've had in your life and kind of how that achievement, how that accomplishment has given you a unique perspective that you can bring to our classroom and bring to our cohort of students that we'll be having. So those are the 2 questions that we ask. They're fairly high level. It's not asking anything, I think, too detailed from you. But the one thing I always tell students to do when you're looking at your essays or when you're starting that process is to make sure that you're actually answering the question that's asked. I think too many times we see students that are submitting essays that they start off talking about what a short-term goal might be, and then they go off on a tangent about something that they did 10 years ago, or they go off into a hobby that they love to do or something like that. But they really don't focus on what those short and long-term goals are, and actually physically answering that question. So one thing I always recommend doing is just making sure throughout your essay that you're tying your response back to what that original main question is, so that you can make sure you're pointing yourself in the right direction and staying on topic with that answer. So that's the first piece of advice that I have. The second piece of advice that I have is to use the essay portion to make your application unique. And what I mean by that is, we get applications, and some of the larger schools even will get, thousands of applications for their programs, and we're reading through thousands of essays on a given basis. So we tend to read a lot of them all at once, and sometimes they kind of run together. We hear a lot of the same responses. People try and stay safe in their essay responses, give very vanilla answers. What we really like to see is something that's going to set you apart from your competitive candidates, the other people who are applying from the program. What is it about you as an applicant that's going to make us say, wow, we really need that student as part of our program because they bring some unique, different perspective to our classroom? We're going to see a lot of students that come from different geographic regions. We're going to see students that come from many different backgrounds, people that have undergraduate degrees in business and engineering and all these different areas, people that have specific skill sets in different areas. So we see kind of everything under the sun as far as that type of diversity. But really what we want to find out is, what is it about yourself? Is it a special skill that you have? Is it a way of thinking that you have? Is there something from your past that gives you a unique perspective on how you handle problems or solve problems in the future? What is it that you're going to bring to our classroom that gives you that unique perspective or allows you to contribute in a different way in the classroom? Our goal as admission advisors and recruiters is to fill our class with people who are going to offer different dynamic characteristics in the class. We don't want to fill 60 students or a 60 student class with people who have all the same ideas and people who have all the same experiences. We want to get that diverse dynamic perspective in our classroom. So whatever you can do in your essay to really shine a light on those things is very helpful. So that being said, the two main things are going to be, first and foremost, make sure you're answering the actual question that's being asked. And then the second part would be, try and find a way that's going to make you stand out amongst the other candidates that are going to be applying for the same program. And some people might have very similar test scores as you, a very similar GPA, very similar experience. So your essay is that opportunity to show us what we're not necessarily going to see in a basic general application when we're pulling numbers and things like that. And then finally, the other part that I'll mention is, if you can tie your essay to pieces that you'll see that are unique to a given program, that makes it very much more relatable. When we go to read an essay and we see that somebody's taken the time and the effort in their essay to relate something that they're doing or relate their answer back to something that our program offers that's unique. So if you come back and you say, I have a great wealth of international experience or international business experience or international travel that I've done, and I love that Fisher College of Business offers the Global Applied Projects program, which allows me to travel and work internationally and get that experience. Those are things that really make it look like you've taken the time and the effort to tailor your essay to fit the exact college or place that you're applying to. So anything you can do to tailor it to that specific organization or institution is beneficial as well.
Well, thank you, Mike. So guys, like Mike said, always answer the question and share something unique about yourself. Now, I was going to ask another question. How long should you take to prepare your MBA essay?
I don't know that there's an exact answer for that. It's going to be whatever your comfort level is. My recommendation would be don't do it in one day. Don't sit down and fill out your application and say, well, I'm just going to get it done and hit submit. What I would recommend doing is start with an outline. If the question is, like one of our questions, what are your short and long-term goals? Maybe you start out with just writing down what you think your goals are. Write those down, get those kind of on a piece of paper and get those ideas out there so that you can then start to think about, well, what goals do I focus on? Maybe I have 10 goals, but my essay isn't going to be long enough to express these 10 goals. Maybe I just want to focus on one or two. So write them all down, find out what the ones that are going to be the best ones that you can put down are. Make sure that you're, again, kind of relating that response back to that original question. Reread it a few times, say it out loud, talk it out loud, read it to somebody else, have somebody else read it back to you. Make sure that the language that you're using flows correctly. Definitely make sure that you're taking the time to have it edited, reread it, and then before you actually go to submit it, just kind of do that one last glance over before you actually submit it to your application. But as far as the amount of time it takes for that, I'd say some people can probably get it done in a week. Some people might want to take a little bit longer and, make sure that you're revising it as many times as you can, but it doesn't have to be something that takes months. I'd say a week or 2 weeks is probably going to be the average.
Great. Now, I'm sure the Fisher College of Business has different specializations. How do you use your essay to show your career goals in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the essay, like I mentioned, you still want to answer the question, but anything that you can do that relates it back to specific things that the university or that the college offers is going to be beneficial. So as Franklin mentioned, we do have our specializations here at Fisher in many different categories. So, sport management, consulting, strategy, operations and logistics, finance, those different areas, you can actually have a specialization and go on to certain courses and, take a different class structure depending on what it is that you want to do in your short and long-term goals. The thing I would recommend is if on your application, you select one or two different specializations that you're interested in, and then we read your essay and it talks about different short and long-term goals that don't match up with the specializations. That's going to kind of give us not necessarily a red flag, but it's going to make us question, do you really know what your goals are? Do you really know what you want to do? Are you sure that the MBA is going to be what you want to proceed with to reach those goals? So the other pieces of your application that you're submitting are going to tell us a little bit about yourself. You want to make sure that those essays you're submitting are actually supporting those other parts of your application. So for instance, if you write that you're interested in consulting as part of your specialization or what you want to go into on your application, but then your essay talks about being in financial management, maybe that's not going to be the best essay to kind of support what it is that's on your application. So just make sure that those things match up and that it shows that you put that kind of complete thought into that application essay and everything together.
Thank you, Mike. Great insight there about the specializations and how to use that in your essay. Now, my next question is around funding. Does your essay affect your funding, or can your essay impact the amount of funding that you are able to get?
It could, and I think it's going to depend on the institution that you're applying for. Here at Fisher, we do review our applications and we make scholarship decisions on a holistic basis. So we will take everything into consideration when we're making those decisions. So not just the admission decision of whether or not you've been accepted, but also that funding as well. Again, I think I can't stress enough what we are really looking for in our students and in our candidates are people who are going to bring unique perspectives and kind of a dynamic asset to our classroom. So in the essay, I mean, you might have a mediocre GPA, you might have an average GMAT or GRE score, but if in your essay you talk about things that are really going to shine in the classroom, you express leadership, you express the traits that we want to see in our MBA graduates, then that can definitely put you over the edge as far as not only an admission decision, but potentially bumping up your scholarship higher than what you might have normally received. So absolutely.
All right. Now, okay, it's 8:23. If you're just joining us, Mike, tell us about qualities of a remarkable essay from the OSU's perspective. I would like everyone who's joining us to leave any new details. Thank you. Okay, so Mike, now my next question is centered around the areas of test scores. For someone who probably did not have the best GMAT or GRE score, how do you use your the essay to explain that? And should you do that in your MBA essay or should you do that in the additional essay?
Sure. With test scores, or if there's anything on your application that you've kind of self-identified as maybe something that's not going to be the strongest piece of your application, I would highly recommend highlighting that in what's going to be a kind of a supplemental essay. So you'll have your normal essays that you'll submit that will have essay prompts. It'll say, this is your question, you need to answer it in 500 words or 1,000 words or whatever it might be. I would focus on those things, or I would not focus on anything that you need to kind of explain about your application. On those are the ones that you want to make sure you're answering the question, you're tying those things back, and you're focusing on what the college or institution is asking. If you have a lower GPA, or maybe you don't have work experience that's too extraordinary, or maybe your GRE or GMAT test scores are a little bit lower than what you would have liked, there's typically going to be a separate part of the application for most schools, and it's going to be called a personal statement, or it's going to be called a supplemental essay that you can submit. What I recommend doing is, before you submit your application, I would look at everything that you're submitting as an entire application and put yourself in the seat of what an admission committee would be looking at. And so you can pull yourself back, look at your own application, kind of remove your own bias from it, and think to yourself, if I'm on the admission committee and I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to admit myself into this program, looking at everything that I'm submitting, what are the great parts and what are maybe the not so great parts? And how can I let the institution know, or let the committee know, that you should accept me because of these great parts, and I'm willing to work on these not so great parts. So if the GMAT or the GRE is what you think would be holding you back from an admission decision, what you can do is, in that supplemental essay or that personal statement that you have, you can say upfront and honest, look, I know that my test scores are probably not near the average or higher than average for what your institution normally accepts. Or personally, I'm just not very excited about the test scores that I got back once I took the test, but instead focus on these other things that I have. My work experience is great. I work very hard, and you can look at my resume. I received promotions in my work experience that I had. My undergraduate GPA was strong. I know what I want to do. My goals are, X, Y, and Z that you want to talk about. So highlight those things that you're not so great at. And then in the second piece of that, you can talk about, I know my GMAT or GRE isn't that high, but you can see that in my undergraduate coursework, I got A's in my statistics classes. I got A's in my math classes. I'm ready for the quantitative rigors of what the courses are going to provide in the program. My writing capabilities are great. I think I would be academically prepared for the program. So, I think I would be a good fit for the institution because of these reasons, but I do understand that maybe my test scores wouldn't be the strongest compared to the other people that are applying. So I wouldn't focus on it in the main essays that you have, but in the supplemental essay or the personal statement that you get to make, it is okay to call those things out if you've done kind of that self-reflection and you've identified some pieces of your application that you might not feel the strongest about.
Great, Mike. Now, for people who are thinking of applying to the Fisher College of Business, because here at Lane, we have a pretty diverse demographic, and what would you say are the common mistakes to avoid when submitting a Fisher essay?
Yeah, for the most part, I think our students and the people applying to our program do a pretty good job of bringing that unique aspect of what their life has been or what you're contributing to the program. Common mistakes we see, we do see some students that, and we understand you're applying to many different places. A lot of students aren't just applying to the Fisher College Business. We understand that. But you want to make sure that in your letters of recommendation that you have, your essays that you're submitting, you want to make sure that it says Fisher College of Business in there. We don't want to see other schools that you're applying to that have been in there. Again, we understand it. It's not going to be something that I think we, hold you to for that much of a negative impact on your application. But we do like to see that you've taken the time to reread it and tailor it to our program and to our application. So you can do that in your essays, you can do that in your personal statements, your resumes, if your letters of recommendation that you have from people that are coming in, if they mention Fisher College of Business in there, it definitely lets us know that, we're the ones that you're looking at as far as where you want to attend, and kind of taking that special or that additional time, I should say, to call out pieces of our program that you are most interested in. So common mistake would be just not personalizing it to the program that you're applying to. A lot like you would when you're applying to a job. You want to make sure you go in and any cover letter you're submitting, you want to make sure you're changing the name of the company that you're applying for. You want to make sure that you're tailoring to the job title that you're applying for. The same goes for college essays and MBA program essays that you're writing. So that's a fairly common mistake I think that some people make. Other things are people submitting essays that, again, kind of go on those tangents, and maybe they're not directly answering the question that is being asked, or not going into enough detail, kind of making it very, very plain essay responses. What you have to understand is we're reviewing thousands of applications. So we want something in your application as we're reading it that makes us remember you. So that when we go to the admission committee, and if we're reviewing 200 people that day, I want to be able to go into the admission committee meeting having read your application and say, man, I really know who this person is. I remember reading this application. Here's why we should accept this student. Rather than going in and saying, yeah, they submitted an essay and it was pretty standard. They kind of wrote the same thing that everybody else writes. Their application is fair. It's okay. Nothing sticks out necessarily. Your essay gives you the opportunity to tell a story, and it gives us the opportunity to remember you for something. So give us something to remember you by when we're having those meetings about the admission process, accepting people, and when we're deciding scholarships.
Great, Mike. Now, over the years, different schools have different essay prompts that have changed. For OSU Fisher, what has changed this year, and what is the school really looking out for?
Yeah, so we actually kept our same essay questions this year. Typically, we'll change every 2 or 3 years to kind of update them and allow students to kind of answer something that's a little bit different. But we kept them the same this year because we feel that the specific questions we're asking really tell us a lot about our students. And I think more specifically what it does is allows us to look at the goals and what the students are looking to get out of their MBA program, and making sure that it matches up with what we offer and what an MBA can do for a student. So we specifically didn't change our essay questions because the 2 questions that we ask, we feel really helps our students answer those, but it also gives students enough freedom to tell us their story within that. We give the opportunity for students to tell us about an achievement that they're excited about, or that they're personally very proud of themselves for having achieved. So the question does 2 things, or the 2 questions, I should say, do 2 things for us. One, it allows us to see what your plans are and whether or not the program we offer can help you achieve those goals. And then the second part is allowing you to kind of be yourself, give us your unique and diverse perspective on what you're bringing to the class, and kind of give us that story to remember you by. So we kept them the same for that specific purpose. I know schools typically will change them up every few years, if not every year. But I think as long as you're focusing on those things, the essay questions in themselves typically kind of all touch on the same ideas, regardless of who you're applying for. So as long as you're focusing on those ideas, the essay questions themselves tend to be pretty consistent among different programs.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. At 8:40, we would get Fred to do the Q&A session, where different people on the call get to like ask their questions, specific questions they have. But I'd like to ask if you have any other points or any other things you'd like to share before we go into that section. That'd be great.
Sure. The other thing I'll share is that as you're applying to schools, know that it's okay, and it's sometimes even expected that students will have questions along the way. And know that as an admission committee or as a school that's recruiting students, it's not just you that's trying to impress us to get accepted into the school. We're trying to impress you as well. So we're looking for that right fit. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. We know that our program is going to be different than the other programs you're applying to. And so we're not trying to be the school or the program that fits every student. And we know that at the end of the day, you may choose to either attend our institution or attend somewhere else. So as you're shopping around, as you're making your applications to different places, if you're doing interviews with admission representatives or alumni or anybody like that, know that it's okay to ask those specific questions to those representatives. If there's something that you want to know, if there's a question that you've had that's kind of burning in the back of your mind, or maybe it's not something you can find on a website, if it's you want to know more about the campus culture, you want to know about how you might fit into the other into the classes or into the cohort that you're applying for, it's okay to ask those questions, because at the end of the day, we're obviously looking to see if you're going to be a good fit for us, but you should also be doing this, asking those questions and going through that process to make sure that we're the right fit for you. It's that mutual kind of back and forth that we have with our students and our candidates that, again, we want to make sure that we're the right fit for each other. So we've had students that have had, really high GMAT scores and high GPAs that at the end of the day, we realize maybe they're not the right fit for, maybe something we read in the essay. If what they have as their goals don't match up with what we can offer, might not be the right fit. And on the same end, we've had students that have had lower than average a GPA or GMAT scores or things like that. And through the essay and the interview that we have with that student, we have come to realize that they're an outstanding fit for our institution and for our culture and for our classroom that we're looking for. And we've accepted and maybe offered scholarship because of that as well. So don't get hung up necessarily on the numbers or those pieces of your application, but instead focus on what it is that you can do to express why you're the right fit for that particular institution that you're applying for.
Thank you, Mike. Now, I'm sure with some of this information, some people are definitely interested in exploring the Fisher MBA. But I would like you to talk a little bit about the class size, the diversity, and the specializations that Fisher is really great at.
Absolutely. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, we are a smaller program. We have typically in a given year, our incoming class is going to be between 60 to 70 students. Makes us one of the smaller programs that you're probably going to be looking at. And what I think that allows us to do is really focus those resources that we have, give that personal touch when you are looking for to be hired after graduation, or if you're looking for an internship, those sorts of things. We have so many resources for our students because our university as a whole is very large and has a lot of resources. And we're really taking the time to focus those on that small group of students. Within our class, the 60 to 70 students that we bring in each year, we are looking for the most diverse characteristics in students that we can find, because we know that, if you had a class of 1,000 people or a couple hundred people even, naturally you would kind of have some of that diversity in there. But for a class of 60 to 70 students, we get to kind of pick and choose in specific people what we want to find and how we can kind of recruit you to be a specific type of perspective that we're looking for in our classroom. So because of that, your essays become much more important to us in that review process, because that's what really tells us who you are and what perspective you'll be bringing. We don't want a class full of people that are all looking for finance specializations, because you're going to get one type of person when you do that. So we want to see students that are looking for all different perspectives, people from all different geographic regions, backgrounds, experience backgrounds, everything that you can think of. So whatever it is that makes you unique, and not necessarily unique to the people that you know within your own circles, but what makes you unique to what you're anticipating our class to look like. So you can go online and you can see our class profiles that we have. You can see how many people are business undergrad majors that come in, how many people are from different countries that we have coming in, how many people are having 1 to 2 years of work experience versus 8 to 10 years of work experience. Whatever it is that makes you different than the average class profile that we have, it's best to highlight that in the application so that we can see that. That being said, you talked about specializations. Things that we're best known for, and the ones that I think are most popular, at least within Fisher. Consulting is really big. We have students that want to go into that. Finance, marketing, and then one that we're really well known for is logistics, which is operations and kind of supply chain management as well, are kind of the most popular and the ones that we're well known for. But what I think is great about our program, and what we recently did to redesign our program, is offer a wide variety of elective courses to where our students can specialize in many different things, and not even within necessarily the field of business. We have students that take public health courses in different colleges, law courses, engineering or computer science courses. So whatever it is that you're really focused on, or that you think might give you an edge in the job market when it comes time to apply to those positions, chances are, again, Ohio State's really large. Chances are we have classes that you can take, elective courses, to help kind of round out your experience and kind of make yourself unique to the people who are going to be recruiting you out of our program.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your insight with us. In case you're just joining, this is the Lane webinar, and today we have Mike from the Fisher College of Business, Ohio State University, talking to us about the qualities of a remarkable essay. And I'll move on to the Q&A session with Fred. Fred is going to take that session. And if you have any questions, you have the option of dropping them in the chat box, and Fred will ask the questions, and then Mike gets to respond. So drop your questions now, and over to you, Fred.
Okay, thank you, Franklin. Hello, Mike.
Hi.
I'm going to start off with, there are quite a few questions here, and I'm going to start off with this. It says, when answering the essay question on our long-term and short-term goals, do you encourage us to talk about our past experiences and how they have led us to the decisions on our goals?
Absolutely, and I think to answer questions about what a short and long-term goal would be, you probably would have to talk about previous experiences. And as long as you're tailoring that message to showcase the future, I think it's going to be great to talk about past experiences. And what I mean by that is, instead of just coming out and saying, I really want to go into finance, or I really want to go into marketing, that's great. You can do that. But what got you to that point? What led you to make that decision? Did you start off in one field and you realized that it wasn't what you wanted to do, and you started working or picked up some extra additional job responsibilities in marketing and you decided you really liked that, but you realized maybe you didn't have the background and skill set necessary to move or change industries or change job functions, then that is a great way to take the previous experience that you've had, talk about why you've decided to change your mind, and then talk about how it's related to the future for you. And that being said, kind of a quick point, typically we have 3 or 4 different types of students that apply to MBA programs in general. We have people who are looking at switching the industry that they work in. So they want to go from manufacturing to consumer products to something else, the complete industry change. We have students that are looking at changing their job function. So they want to go from accounting to marketing or something along those lines. We have students that are looking at being entrepreneurs. So people that are obviously trying to start their own business. Maybe they have a product or a service that they're looking to promote, or a business that they're running, but they need that background and skills to be successful. And then the other part, the other big one that we have are people that are considered career accelerators. So people that are in their job function, they like what they do. Maybe they love the company that they work for, but they're trying to make that next big step. And the best way they see to do that is to get that universal skill set that an MBA would provide to make you a little bit better or give you that higher level viewpoint so that you're ready for that next step, if it's management or if it's that C-suite level that you'd be going into as well. So it's good to talk about kind of how those things can translate into your short or long-term goals. What category do you fit into and why?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's another question that says someone wants to find out if the English language proficiency test is compulsory for international students. I mean, some of these students have already taken their first degree in English, so they want to find out if they still have to go through with the IELTS all over again.
Yeah, so for our program, it is. You do have to submit either TOEFL, IELTS, or we actually do accept Duolingo scores now. So one of those 3 tests you can actually submit to us for English proficiency purposes. There are certain exceptions if you completed your undergraduate degree from an institution within the United States or one that's been verified by Ohio State as an English-speaking institution. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but in most cases, you would still need to submit those test scores to be considered.
Okay. Well, going back to the essays, I have this question. It says, do prospective applicants who have suffered a tragedy have any consideration in terms of the amount of funding they get?
It's a good question. So if you're talking about something that would kind of reflect in your application, so maybe your GPA is a little bit lower, or if test scores might be lower than what we would have expected, if there's an explanation for that and it's something that obviously there's a story behind it, definitely talk about that in either your essay or your personal statement, and it would be taken into consideration in the admission process, at least for us. We really love to focus on this holistic approach to our admissions, where we're not just going to look at a GPA and a GMAT or a GRE score and say either yes or no because you either fit or don't fit that criteria. If you have something that would show that, maybe in your undergraduate career, something happened where you had to take a semester off and it reflected in your grades or something along those lines. I mean, we're people, we understand that. We understand that there's things that come up and that can happen. But as long as you're taking the time to explain that in your essay or in your personal statement or supplemental information essay, as long as we have that piece that we can point to it and say, oh, their GPA isn't that great, but we looked at this and there's a reason for it. Everything else looks good. Let's give them a chance as far as admission's concerned, or, let's maybe not consider that when we're looking for scholarship for students as well. So I do highly encourage students to take that kind of high level view of their application, find out what, if you were an admission committee member and you're looking at that application, kind of take a look at what you would see as maybe the weak points and take those weak points and explain them in that supplemental information essay.
Okay, okay, okay. So we have this, someone wants to find out if how will deferred admissions affect the incoming class in 2021? He's saying, will the number of people accepted be reduced? In the case where people defer, they get the admission, but then they defer it. So the number of admissions, would they be replaced for those ones that are deferred?
Sure, that's a good question. And as of right now, I don't see that there's going to be necessarily a huge drop off in the amount of people that we'd either accept or not accept through that process. Obviously, you know, last year we had a huge dip in the amount of international students that we could accept because of travel restrictions and visa appointments couldn't go through and whatnot. So we do have a fairly significant amount of students that are going to be deferring into fall 2021 for us that were originally applying for this last semester, this August semester that we just, we're about halfway through right now. So that being said, we do kind of have a pretty decent amount of students that have taken us up on deferring until this upcoming next year. However, we do anticipate that we'll still be offering admissions to international students. We'll still have some scholarship money that we'll be able to offer to students as well. But this year is definitely going to be a little bit different compared to previous years. It might be a little bit more competitive than it has been in the past, but that's also, I think, kind of the reason that these essays are probably that much more impactful in your application, because it allows us to really see who it is you are as a person and get that unique perspective.
Okay, that's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. Thank you, Mike, for explaining this. We would still like you to, there's something you said earlier, and when you said it, some people had not joined in the meeting, and would like you to touch on it a bit. You spoke about how a good essay can positively affect the decisions of the admission officer for an applicant that doesn't necessarily meet the GRE benchmark. Can you please touch on that again and how your essay can sway the admissions officer?
Yeah, and so again, I think it's just taking your own life experiences, things that you've done in the past or things that you plan on doing in the future, and really get as personal as long as you're comfortable doing it, get as personal as you want to in these essays, because again, these are the things that we're going to remember when it's time to sit around in our admission committees and kind of make those decisions on who's going to be accepted and who's not, who might go to a wait list instead of being accepted, or scholarships that we might have. So do whatever you can in those essays to make it stand out. Don't be afraid to brag about yourself. If there's a specific accomplishment that you've had that you're really proud of, that you know not a lot of other people are able to say that they've done, brag about yourself. This is the time and the place to do that. And you know, if you're traditionally a humorous person, you know, use some humor in it. If there's a piece of your characteristics or who you are, your own personality, you know, let your personality show in these essays. We want to be able to remember you, and think of it as your opportunity. If you meet somebody and you get to write them 500 words, and in those 500 words, you have to have them remember you, what would you say? And this is your opportunity to do that. So whatever that is, whether it's a personal story from your past, or whether it's something that made you realize that maybe you're in the wrong field right now and you're going to get an MBA for your own personal reasons, highlight those things and, you know, let us know about it. If there's something that you can kind of point to that tells us who you are as a person and lets us remember you in those conversations, that's going to be the biggest piece of this essay.
Oh, thank you very much. It's quite interesting that you pointed out you mentioned 500 words. Now, I was going to ask, is there a particular amount of, or the volume in terms of the essay itself that you are expecting to write, in terms of number counts, or that is not really important?
In all honesty, I think the only reason that word counts or number counts or anything like that are on essays is so that we don't get something that's going to be 10 pages long. You know, as much as we love reading about our candidates, at the same time, we might be reviewing 1,000 people or hundreds of people at a time. And we don't necessarily have the resources to be able to read all of that. So we put the word counts on there as more of a general guideline in most cases, so that we kind of give the expectation for students that whatever point you're going to make or whatever you're going to talk about, you want to get across in a concise manner while still getting your point across. So if it's a 500-word essay, it doesn't mean you have to write exactly 500 words. By all means, it can be shorter than that. I would kind of encourage students not to go over any sort of word limit. But if you can come under it, you know, I think that's definitely fine as well. But still try and give us the best response that you can and the clearest picture of who you are. And again, make sure you're answering the questions in those responses as well. But the word counts themselves and the restrictions on those are more just so that, you know, I think if people had the opportunity, they'd write 10 pages about themselves, and, you know, we'd probably read them and they'd be great. But at the same time, you know, we have time constraints on what we can do, and we're trying to get just 1 or 2 points from each student's essay.
Okay. Your experience, I'm sure you've come across a lot of essays, hundreds, if not thousands of essays. Can you tell us, is there any essay that has really stood out to you? Something that it's very memorable. You just can't, as soon as it's read, you were able to just identify with this person and say, hey, meet this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always probably 2 or 3 every year that, you know, a lot of times we'll read essays, and in the admission committee, you know, again, we're kind of sitting around together and we're discussing applicants. What we really want to see are the ones where I know, you know, if I have your file in front of me and, you know, if I'm the one who reviewed your application and I'm kind of pitching it to the admission committee in the essay, I want to be able to say, hey, listen, everybody, you need to read this essay because it's going to touch your heart. Maybe there's a backstory in there that talks about something that you've had to overcome personally. I know that those are always great stories because they're emotional. They talk about, you know, kind of maybe something that's happened in your life that made you who you are today. But a lot of times those essays will give us kind of a snapshot of why you're doing what you're doing now. Maybe something happened that made you realize you wanted to go back to school, or made you realize you wanted to change your career path, or you know, something along those lines. But I won't necessarily go into details about specific ones that I've read, but those are always great ones. Other ones that we tend to like are ones that, I guess for lack of a better word, maybe they're obscure in some way. They talk about maybe things that they've seen, or things that they do as a hobby, or charitable work that they've done, causes that they've supported, things like that are just kind of outside of the academic scope of things in general. It doesn't always have to be about academics, but we've had candidates that'll tell us, you know, I realized that I wanted to get an MBA because it would help me with a political career, and I went and I protested for human rights or for certain causes in my home country, and you know, these are the things that we accomplished as a group and did, and I know that having an MBA will allow me to start a nonprofit maybe to combat these sorts of things. So linking something that you've done to something that you plan to do in the future creates a really good essay, and those are the things that help us remember students. And everybody, I think, has a different story, but we also kind of on that same note, so we get a lot of students that submit essays like that. We also get a lot of essays about, you know, I want to get an MBA because I want to go into this other field and make a lot of money. You know, that's, people will submit an essay that says that, and obviously more words and probably more eloquent, but there's people who submit essays like that. And, you know, that's great. That might be your goal, and that might be why you're getting an MBA, but we like to see people who have more to their story than just that.
That's very interesting. We all want to make more money.
Right. Who doesn't want to make more money and, you know, work for a great company and all that? You know, we get it. And the MBA will help you do that. But we like to see kind of the connecting of the dots and the line of, you know, this is what I've done in the past, this is why I want to get an MBA, and this is why I want to do what I want to do.
Okay, so we're wrapping up the Q&A session in 2 minutes, and I'll let everyone know that if you still have a question, it's time you drop the question in the chat box, or you could raise your hand and you could speak directly. But in the interim, I would also want to ask, there's something you said earlier, Mike. You said you emphasized on candidates that are very specific on what they want. Now, I would also want to make you understand that there are some people, some candidates here that they know that they want to go into an MBA program, but they are not entirely sure. The lines are still these lines are blurry, and they feel once they get into the program and they start the program, that's when it's unclear. So for candidates like that, well, how would you advise that they write their essay, put it to the admissions officer? How their thought process in this regard?
That is a great question, and thank you for bringing that up. And I definitely want to clarify that, you know, we get a lot of students that are applying to our program that don't know what they want to do yet, and that's completely fine. You don't have to know exactly what your goals are, and a lot of times we don't expect you to. Some students have that mapped out ahead of time, but if you don't know what you want to go into, or maybe you're using the MBA program as a method to find out what that next step would be, the best way to describe it, or the best way to talk about what your goals are, is maybe talk about the things that you know you don't want to do. If you've had work experience for 2 or 3 years and maybe you didn't like what you're doing, you didn't like the industry you were in, talk about those things that you know after that experience that you don't want to do those things. And then you can say, I'd love to explore these other pieces because I know I'm good at these specific skills. I know I have certain knowledge in these different areas that could support maybe 2 or 3 different types of careers, and I want to explore those. That's a perfectly acceptable answer to those questions. So talk about, you know, what it is that's bringing you to the point of the MBA is the solution to what you want to do in the future, even if you don't know exactly what that end goal is. What is it that an MBA program can do to help you realize what it is that you want to do?
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much. This is chance. If anyone that has any other question, this is your last chance. We're even running out of time. So I'm going to hand it back to Franklin. Franklin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for your insights and for answering the questions so elegantly. We hope to have you come on some other time for probably another topic and to get more out of this. Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of people are already sold on the idea of exploring the Fisher program. So for anyone in Lane right now, if you have anything that you want to say to Mike, or you have any other question you want to ask, you can raise your hand now. This is your last chance before we wrap up this session. We have already passed our 1 hour mark. Okay, so Mike, I wanted to ask, for people who are considering, you know, submitting or exploring the Fisher MBA right now, how can we get access to app fee waivers, if that's available, and or can people who are interested in getting that who are part of the session, can they have access to that?
Absolutely, and if you give me a couple seconds here, I can actually pull up an application fee waiver for everybody that's in here today. We can have that. So let me give everybody, and I just put my email in the chat as well. So if anybody has any specific questions or anything after this, feel free to email me as well. And I just put an application fee waiver in the chat as well. So if anybody does decide that they want to apply, you can use that code and it'll be a free application for you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so very much. We also
very
have
much.
of everyone who has attended, and we can make that available for you to send like additional information or extra material that you feel would be helpful for anyone who is trying to apply. Thank you so much for joining the session. And we understand if you have to leave right now because of, the schedule is tight, and we understand that. But we do have this after sessions where we get to dive into other issues that are outside of the topic for today. And we really do appreciate you for coming, and we hope that you have a splendid day.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the opportunity.
Hand. Please, 1 second. Sorry, I raised my hand. I'm sorry, Tim. It's quite late. Please, quick question. With your time at Fisher, have you met any Nigerian MBA students that finished from Fisher, and can you share their experience, or how is the alumni community at Fisher?
Yes, I have. So in full transparency, I have been at Fisher for just a little over a year now, so not very long. So I haven't specifically recruited anybody who's graduated yet. I have obviously talked to all the people who graduated this last year, and then we have our second year students that are in their second year now, and then we just recently brought in our first year class. But I would say specifically from Nigeria, it's probably one of our top 5 or 6 countries where we receive applications from. So we do see a pretty good representation from Nigeria specifically, and we do accept a fair amount of students from Nigeria. And personally, I've always had a great time interacting and talking and reading those applications, because I feel like there's a lot of great stories in there, and we get a lot of great students from there as well. So I could in the chat I put my email as well. If you'd like to reach out or talk with any of our students from Nigeria, or maybe even recent alums, you can always send me an email. I can try and get you in touch or connected with those students as well.
Thank you.
What up from Africa, Nigeria, Africa as a whole? Do you have
absolutely
Africans?
Absolutely, and again, I think a lot of programs you'll see around the country here in the United States typically get a majority or at least a large population from like China and India is what you'll see a lot. For us, in all honesty, we get applications from India, we get a couple from China, but kind of Africa as a whole, within all the countries of Africa, I would say that probably overtakes our population that we get from China and India, which are typically the 2 largest contributors to international students entering U.S. programs. So I would say that Africa is probably either similar or a higher representation for us, at least, than those other countries or other areas.
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today, and for even taking extra time. We really appreciate you. All right, so we'd like to